The time is at hand.
The elusive dog-like creature attacks livestock, bleeding them dry of blood.
8 to 10 feet tall, shadowy aliens.
The appearance of a mysterious monolith.
Making it rain by zapping clouds.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Welcome to In Dark Places, scary stories for Halloween. I'm your Huckleberry, Junebug Fugit. What scares you? What's your scary story? On Wednesday, April 1st, 2009, I got home from work. It was a little after 9 o'clock. I always work late. I was looking forward to being off the next day. I parked my car in the garage. I normally just parked it under the carport, but on this night I parked it in the garage, closed the door, and didn't plan on being bothered any the next day. I was just going to hide from the world and enjoy my day off. So my car needed to be hidden. I went inside the house. I fixed some dinner. Me and my wife ate dinner while we watched a movie or something. It was getting pretty late. Around 1:30 a.m. I decided, I should take a bath before I go to bed because I'm all stinky and nasty from work. We had a really hot water heater. My dad used to talk about the water being dangerously hot and that the water heater was going to blow up one day. And I like to take hot baths and rest my poor achy body after a long day from work. So as the bathtub was filling up with scalding hot water, I was reading the Bible. I try to read a chapter a day. Sometimes I'm a slacker. I was reading Deuteronomy chapter 5. When you heard the voice out of the darkness, while the mountain was ablaze with fire, all the leaders of your tribes and your elders came to me, and you said, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his majesty, and we have kept his voice from the fire. Today we have seen that a person can live even if God speaks with them. But now, why should we die? This great fire will consume us, and we will die if we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer. For what mortal has ever heard the voice of the living God speaking out of the fire as we have, and survived? And right about that time, I heard the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life. It was so loud that it felt like somebody just sucker punched me right in the stomach and took the breath right out of me. The lights went out. It was completely dark. The wall in the bathroom fell down on top of me. My first thought was, the water heater blew up. I heard my wife screaming and crying from the other bathroom on the other side of the house. I felt my way to the bathroom door, then felt my way down the hallway. The back door of our little trailer was standing wide open. I looked up at the ceiling, which was caving in around me. I could see the stars outside. I kept feeling my way down the hallway into the kitchen, and there was glass everywhere from all the dishes falling out of the cabinets. I stepped on lots of glass. It hurt. Finally made my way to the living room and found my wife in there. Our front door was standing open. All the windows in the house were laying in the floor of the house, all blown inside. We hugged, we cried. I found my shoes, and I stepped out on the porch to try to figure out what in the world happened. The next door neighbor's house was gone. It was just a pile of splinters. Our garage door was open. I saw the car inside, with a small fire next to it. The wall on the right side of the garage was gone. I always watched movies of airplanes crashing and asteroids hitting Earth and stuff like that. So that was running through my mind. I thought either an airplane hit that house or an asteroid hit it. I kept looking at the pile of splinters over there, and I didn't see any airplane wings or anything like that. I went back inside and told my wife the house was gone over there. We went into our bedroom and the door leading out to our balcony that came from the bedroom was also blown open. The balcony door that went to the garage was open, and I could see more fire. My wife went back into the kitchen and got a garbage bag, started packing up clothes, throwing what she could in the garbage bag, and I went into shock. I had all of my guitars, my nice telescope, my computer, my TV, everything right there in the bedroom close by us. I had my newly cashed income tax check hiding inside of my record player. I think it was about $1,500, $2,000, something like that. The whole time my wife was packing up all of the clothes that she could get inside that garbage bag, and I didn't have the presence of mind to grab any of that cool, expensive stuff that was right there in the bedroom with us. All I could think of was there was a bird inside the bedroom. We always had a bird that had a nest out on the balcony, and I guess the force of the explosion blew the bird inside the house. The bird was freaking out in the bedroom, flying around, flapping in the floor. All I could think of the whole time is, I've got to save that bird. Even though we had 2 cats inside the house there somewhere with us too. I didn't think anything about them. I just wanted to save that bird. After what seemed like hours, but I'm sure was only like 5 minutes, I finally caught the bird. Had a little celebratory moment. I held it up, was proud of it. I got it! I saved the bird. So I took it out on the balcony, set it free, and I saw the fire raging where the garage used to be, making its way over to the bedroom. My wife filled the garbage bag up with what clothes she could fit, and then I took her outside to get her out of harm's way. We stood out there in the yard next to our little storage building for a couple of minutes. Then I told her I was going to go back inside the house and try to save what I could. The shock was kind of starting to wear off, and I was starting to become more aware that we were losing our house. I walked back around to the living room door and stepped inside to the living room, and there was smoke everywhere. And the whole time, none of our fire alarms went off either. I totally forgot about how, when you were in school, they told you about if you were in a fire to get down and crawl. Didn't even think about that. I was just trying to walk normally through the living room, and the smoke just started gagging me to death. I was coughing non-stop, just hacking, gagging. I put my face in my shirt and just ran back to the back door and ran back outside. And I saved nothing from the house when I went back in. When I went back out with my wife, I could see the neighbors waving us over to their house by that time. So we went inside their house, and as we walked, we could see all the damage. It looked like a bomb went off. The pile of splinters that used to be that house were just scattered all over the road. Fences were knocked down. Other houses were falling apart. And our house was the only one that was on fire. The road was completely blocked. There was no way that any traffic was going to get in or out of our holler. That's neighborhood. For those not well versed in hillbilly language. We live in a holler. And it dawned on me that there's no way the fire department is going to be able to get up to the fire to put it out, and that we were going to lose our house. We sat around with the neighbors for about 30 minutes. They tried to comfort us. I told them the story of what I just told here. And finally the lady of the house remembered that her son had a cell phone. And our holler is very notorious for not being able to get a signal on a cell phone. And just like clockwork, we could not get a signal on that cell phone. We walked around all through their house, their kitchen, their living room, everywhere, trying to figure out where we could get a signal. And then she finally remembered that sometimes she can get a signal in her son's bedroom. So I went in there, and there was a dial tone. I called my mom. I cried like a baby, and I begged her to drive up and save us from that nightmare. That was pretty scary. But it wasn't the scariest night of my life. We were forced to move in with my parents in the haunted house. We thought it was only going to be a couple weeks, maybe a month or two. The lawyers would fight it out in court, and we'd be able to get a new home. 5 months later, my mom's cancer came back. She had had it, I think, 3 times previously. 1990, 2000, and 2007. When it came back in September 2009, it was really aggressive and spreading fast. My mom was my best friend. It was hard to watch her just keep getting worse every day. On February 13th, 2010, my mom lost her battle. That was scary. I didn't know how I was going to make it without her. In the meantime, the never-ending lawsuit raged on in the courts. The lawyers argued back and forth with each other, trying to figure out how they were going to evenly pay all the 5 households who received damage from the explosion. The judge finally made a decision 2 years later, in April of 2011. We had been looking for other places to live all that time and couldn't really find anything. So by that time, we decided that we still had our land. We might as well use the money we got from the lawsuit and either build a new house or buy a double-wide trailer to put there. So that ended up being the solution. We bought a double-wide trailer, just like Art Bell used to live in. He always had a double-wide trailer. We bought our double-wide trailer in June 2011. Took them a couple weeks to even bring the trailer up to our land. And it was sitting there in 2 pieces another couple weeks waiting for the guys to come and put it together for us. So they finally got it all put together and everything. And it's a pretty crappy process. If you've ever bought a double-wide trailer before, you know. But the guys that do the construction work and everything and putting it together just basically do nothing. They bring it to your land and they just leave it. And then you have to hook up all the plumbing and do all the cleaning and everything yourself. So the trailer is finally ours. It's on our land. And we go inside for the first time to find scraps of wood, staples, plastic, garbage just everywhere in every room of the house. Tons of sawdust, you name it, it was a mess. And there was no electricity. The electric company doesn't turn on the electric until you have water running in the house. So we had to put all the plumbing and stuff together. My dad did most of that because he was a plumber. And like I said, I always work late every night. So I was working after dark in the house, trying to put the bathroom pipes together and stuff like that, and the sinks and stuff. So it's probably around the end of June 2011 by this point. I have exact dates somewhere, but I can't find them right now. Sorry. I was working on the pipes in the bathroom next to this very recording room where I'm at right now. I had been working on it for a few nights, and every night when I would come into the house with my trusty flashlight, I could hear whispers coming from this room where I am right now. I would walk into the room and spot my flashlight around, and I didn't see anything for a while. One night I heard the whispers, and I came into the room with my flashlight, and I saw 2 demons over in the corner of the room. I could see them just as plain as I see the nose on your face. I guess that don't really work. But I could see them as clear as I can see this microphone that's in front of me. It kind of looked like gargoyles. They were pitch black. They were short. They were cowering over in the corner. They had red eyes. As I was looking at them, I heard them plotting against me. I would estimate the bigger one of the 2 was about 30 inches tall, and then there was a smaller one kind of hiding behind the bigger one, kind of looking over its shoulder. They seemed kind of shocked that I could see them, so I just left and went back to my dad's house. That was scary. The next night I went back to the double-wide to try to hopefully finish the pipes in that bathroom. I just avoided this room. It's a little small spare bedroom type of room. I just decided if I didn't go into that room, then I would be safe, I guess. So I was in the bathroom working on the pipes, and I heard the back door of the house close. More like a kind of a slam, but not just like a hard slam, if that makes any sense. Just closing loudly. The back door closed. So I thought, well, great. One of the local crackheads has found his way into the house. So I got up out of the floor and I walked out the bathroom door, expecting to have a big confrontation with a crackhead, and all the cabinet doors in the kitchen were standing open. They weren't open before, they were all closed. That was scary. I did a quick glance in the other bedrooms and the rest of the house to see if there was any crackheads hiding anywhere. I didn't see anyone, so I quickly went back to the safety of my dad's haunted house. So the next night after work, it's the same thing again. It's dark in the house. I had my flashlight, working on those pipes in the bathroom sink. Took me like a week, I think, because I'm not a plumber. I heard the usual whispers coming from the spare bedroom. I had my head down under the sink, and then all of a sudden, this big, loud thump jarred me straight up, and I bumped my head and everything on the sink. It sounded like a 200-pound weight just dropped in the kitchen floor. Just a big, massive, dead weight falling. So I just sat there in the bathroom for a few seconds, trying to compose myself and work up the courage to get out of the bathroom and go possibly see if it was a crackhead. So I finally walked out. All the cabinet doors were closed in the kitchen. There wasn't any more whispers or anything. Everything was just peaceful and quiet. I did a quick glance in the other rooms of the house, looking for crackheads, and I saw nothing. And I ran away to the safety of my dad's haunted house again. And that was the scariest night of my life. I've never been more scared than I was on that night. So finally I had a day off. I wanted to go to the house in the daytime so it wouldn't be so scary. I didn't have a clue of what I was doing, but I watched enough TV shows to know that the house needed to be cleansed. So I walked around in each room and I said a little prayer, and I told the demons that they were not welcome here and that they needed to leave. And I don't know why, but somehow it worked. The house was cleansed. That heaviness and the scary feeling was all gone. A couple weeks later, after I already got all the pipes in the bathrooms fixed up and the sinks and the toilets were all functioning properly and everything, it was time to actually start cleaning the house. Try to clean up some of the construction guys' mess. I started with the kitchen because it had a linoleum floor. I thought that would be kind of fast and easy to clean up. So I was sweeping in the kitchen and dining room area, sweeping up all those tons of sawdust that the guys left behind. Right in the middle of the kitchen, where I heard that big weight noise hit the floor that night, there was some kind of weird, dried, crusty, brown stuff in the floor. My thought is it was blood, but I don't have any way of proving that. And for some dumb reason I didn't take any pictures of it or anything. But it was basically a big circle of dry brown stuff in the floor, about the size of a person. It took quite a bit of scrubbing and elbow grease to get that big stain off the linoleum floor in the kitchen. It was kind of weird because we bought the double wide in 2011, but it was a 2009 model, supposedly new, that had been sitting there on the lot for all that time just waiting for someone to buy it. It was kind of like a dead stock type of deal. They had the price reduced and everything, trying to get rid of it because it had been sitting there for so long. But it was supposedly brand new. Or was it? And that's the longest intro in the show's history. I feel like it was necessary to paint the whole picture so you could get the whole story. This week on the show, scary stories for Halloween. This story was sent in by our friend James. Thanks, James. Bizarre tale of Moon Man lives on in remote Braxton County Valley by David Sibrey. Thanks, David. The ghost town of Centrale, with no more than a dozen houses and a country store, might seem one of the most isolated communities in West Virginia, though it's a drive of only 20 miles from the nearest interstate. Now the site of a popular campground bordering the backwaters of scenic Sutton Lake, it's perhaps best known among ghost hunters as the home of the Moon Man, and a remarkably strange story. Along the track of the old Baltimore and Ohio Railway, an eccentric drifter known in the late 1800s as the Moon Man was decapitated after being hit by a train at Centrale. Some said his headless ghost haunted the tracks, and some say it still does. According to most sources, thanks sources, the phantom was that of Jacob Beamer. It long walked the rails near Centrale, about 13 miles up the Elk River from Sutton, West Virginia, along I-79. Beamer was said to have been struck by a train at night and run over in about 1890. Only a few years after the railroad through that section of the mountains was constructed. The tragedy of the violent removal of Beamer's head isn't the only thing remarkable about him. He had already been given the name Moon Man by locals who reported that his origin story was a subject of some discussion. Beamer claimed his ancestors had come down from the moon and had been forced to remain on Earth after a meteor knocked the moon out of its orbit, destroying all life in what had been a thriving lunar civilization. It was also the subject of some discussion that Beamer liked to stroll in the moonlight, and on such a night, beneath the brilliant West Virginia moon, he met his death under the hooves of the iron horse. When the townsfolk found his mangled body, it was headless. The head has never been found. It could have been carried away by the train. It may have rolled into the Elk River and been lost beneath the still waters of what's now Sutton Lake. 4 years after the tragedy, some of the residents of Centrale claimed to see a gray ghost leading a stooping, headless man, who they took to be Beamer. The phantoms walked along the tracks, looking downward for the missing head. In the 1930s, a hunter from Pittsburgh reported that he saw the pair, and he believed the ghost of Beamer was holding a skull in the crook of his left arm. The two weren't seen for years, and most assumed that the Moon Man had finally found his head. Though the original tracks were removed in the 1950s when Sutton Lake was created, ghost hunters say the phantoms walk the meadows along the lake where the tracks ran. My 2-year-old saw a ghost, the parenting moment that gave me chills. How a simple night of play turned into an eerie encounter that made me rethink toddler fears and creepy moments. By Adam Motz and T. Lamb. Thanks, Adam and T. I never believed in ghosts until one evening when my 2-year-old daughter made me question everything. I had to ask myself, was she haunted? An ordinary evening takes a chilling turn. We were all playing together in our basement play area one evening when, out of nowhere, Reeve started screaming and crying. These were terrified screams. Something had really scared her. She made a beeline for the stairs and kept saying, "Go up, go up." She was desperate to get out of there. It was an unusual reaction from her. Of course, 2-year-olds have meltdowns, but Reeve isn't one to just erupt for no reason, and I couldn't point to anything that might have happened. We were playing. She didn't get hurt. Nobody took anything from her. No loud noises, and her twin sister, Sky, was playing right next to her. But Reeve's outburst was so abrupt, and she was so insistent on going upstairs, that I took them both up to the living room immediately. Introducing Purple, my toddler's eerie ghost. We sat on the porch until Reeve calmed down, and I gently asked her what happened. "What did you see?" She responded, "A ghost." A ghost? It was just after Halloween season, and the whole neighborhood was decorated, but we didn't really talk much about ghosts. I certainly didn't expect her to identify the thing that scared her as a ghost. I asked her to tell me more. Does the ghost have a name? Without hesitation, she said the ghost's name was Purple. That was all I could get out of her before she got bored with the whole conversation and left the couch to find some toys to play with. I was skeptical that she saw a ghost. It was easy to explain this away as a figment of a toddler's imagination. But it made me think back to eerie moments from the recent past. At breakfast, both girls would often look behind me at the same time and wave at something or someone I couldn't see. They would wave and say hi and people to what looked like nothing. But now, knowing that we had a basement ghost named Purple, I wondered if maybe I had misheard them all along. Had they been saying purple instead of people? I also thought about the basement speaker that had been acting up lately, making a weird, violent, buzzing noise that would come and go at strange times. Was Purple messing with the equipment? The midnight screams. Is Purple real? That night, Reeve woke up in the middle of the night, screaming that same terrified scream, which was again unusual for her. Normally she sleeps straight through the night, 12 hours, no issues. When I went in to calm her down, I didn't even ask her what happened. She was already saying over and over, "It's purple, it's purple." I immediately had chills. The hairs on my arms were standing up. It's one thing to hear about some ghost named Purple during the day when we're all up and playing together. It's a totally different experience to be woken up by screams in the middle of the night. Enter your child's pitch dark room with a white noise machine ominously playing in the background, and be told by nightlight that there's a ghost in the room with you. I checked the footage from her baby monitor and room camera, but saw nothing. I let it go, chalking it up to a bad dream, and rubbed her back until she fell asleep. Still, I felt for her. Growing up, I had night terrors from the age of about 7 to 13. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes screaming. In a half-sleep days, I would use my bedroom furniture to barricade my door to prevent anything from getting in. I'd then fall asleep in my closet until the next morning, when I'd wake up to the sound of my bedroom door crunching into the furniture, as my mom tried to get me to wake up for school. My parents tried everything they could think of to stop it, letting me sleep on the floor of their room, removing the door from my bedroom, taking me to a sleep therapist and hypnotist, but none of it worked. And then one day it just stopped happening. But even now, all these years later, I occasionally shoot out of bed or sleepwalk. No one knows why. Looking for a ghost in the basement. As the week went on, Reeve continued to mention Purple. T and I were always willing to talk to her about it, but we also didn't want to give it too much oxygen or turn it into something bigger than it was. But she kept bringing it up. I decided to dig a little deeper. One of those days when she was in a great mood, I asked her about Purple. "What does Purple look like?" She responded matter-of-factly. "A baby." Creepy, but I pressed on. "Where does Purple live?" I asked, and she answered, "The basement." "Where in the basement?" "The closet." What was happening? We loved our house, and I really did not want to find out that it was haunted. I asked Reeve to show me where I could find Purple. I picked her up in one arm and Sky in the other, and carried them down to the basement. We walked around the play area, and I asked if they saw Purple. They both said no. After a minute or so in the play area, we headed toward the basement hallway, a long corridor with a bedroom, bathroom, and a furnace room off one side, some closets on the other, and a full-length mirror at the end. And that's when it happened. Sky slowly raised her finger, Grim Reaper style, and pointed at something down the dark hallway. At that same moment, Reeve suddenly buried her face into my shoulder and started crying, saying, "No, no, no!" Sky kept pointing. Reeve refused to lift her head. I didn't see anything, but I paused there for a bit, thinking, do I really want to go down that hallway? I admit, I was creeped out by a closet-dwelling baby named Purple that I barely believed was real. Creeped out enough that I almost didn't go down the hallway. The whole point of this exercise was to show the kids that there was no purple, no ghost, nothing to be afraid of. But their actions were making me wonder. Helping my kids face their fears. Standing there at the end of the hallway, holding my kids, I didn't have the luxury of being scared, and I certainly couldn't show them any sort of nervousness or hesitation, let alone fear. It would just compound theirs. I was now in my new role of Dad, the protector. I had to show them how to face their fears. And really, ghost or no ghost, I was ready for whatever it was. I would walk through fire for these girls. A little bit of ghost busting was nothing. Reeve was still buried in my shoulder, so Sky showed me which way to go. She pointed down the hallway until we got to the first room door, when she directed me in there. Once inside the room, she pointed to the closet. The closet. Their story was checking out so far. Everything had led us to this moment. This was it. We stood there in front of the closet. I grabbed the doorknob, took a deep breath, and threw the door open, ready for whatever jumped out at us. There was no baby. There was nothing purple. There was no ghost. The only things in the closet, even remotely resembling a ghost, bed sheets. I asked them, "Do you see purple?" Reeve looked up with a sheepish grin on her face. They both shook their heads no. Maybe purple had gone out for a bit. We spent a little more time in there, until they were both fully at ease. I wanted to give them some tools to use if this happened again. We talked about purple, and what we might do if we ever saw purple come back. Maybe we could just say, "Hey purple," or "Go away purple," or "Ignore it," or throw it across the room. Kick purple, wave at purple, smash purple. They were giggling now, as we came up with silly ways to deal with our ghost friend. They realized that everything was okay. They were both fine. And so was I, because no ghost. Thank God. Parenting through the unknown. The last of purple. It felt good to have that moment together. We faced something that really freaked them out. I was proud of them, and I had one of my first experiences as a parent of needing to comfort them while facing something that made me, admittedly, quite uncomfortable. After that, we didn't hear about Purple the Ghost anymore, but there's one sign that makes me wonder if it might still be with us. Like at the end of a horror movie, when we catch a glimpse of something to hint that the monster isn't dead, the ghost isn't gone. There might be a sequel. Reeve's favorite color, by a long shot, is purple. She'll deck herself out in purple from head to toe whenever she can. Anytime she gets a choice on color, it's purple. Anyone who knows her knows she loves purple. Could it be that purple? It might be just a silly ghost story, but this whole thing reminded me that as parents, we often have to face things we can't explain. These moments are opportunities for growth, learning, facing fears, and coming out stronger. That's true for the kids and for us. While we're raising them, we're still growing ourselves. The best thing we can do is to be there to support them as we guide them through. And even though our kids might expect us to have all the answers, sometimes we just don't. Especially when it comes to a baby ghost named Purple. Well then, that wasn't quite the type of story I was hoping for. Let's try this next one. How about a haunted grocery store while you're out there buying candy and stuff? I grew up in a farm town, and the only place to get groceries, besides the grossly overpriced Shopco on the edge of town, was the family-owned supermarket, Robertson's. The Robertson family was very active in the community, but also had a reputation from being miserly to straight-up evil, depending on who you asked. If you ask me and the rest of the bag boys, Robertson's had a dark aura around it. Many features contributed, like the vaulted ceilings in the back rooms, the creaking floors in the upstairs offices, and the door hidden behind a pile of old shelves that seemed to lead under the loading dock. The worst was the patriarch of the Robertsons, Blaine. He was too old to handle the business decisions, but he was too stubborn to let his toupee-toting son take it out of his hands. So he spent his days shuffling around the floor, antagonizing the bag boys at every turn. He'd chastise us for clocking in more than a minute early. He'd chastise us for standing at the clock with a minute left at our shift. He'd chastise us for our laziness the second we weren't actively moving items. I always joked that Blaine was a vampire. He just refused to die. Why else is there never a call over the intercom for kids who lost their parents? One night my suspicions were reinforced. Blaine had showed up about 9 o'clock to take care of some office work upstairs. With all of our closing duties done, my partner for the night and I lollygagged in the stockroom right at the foot of the office stairs. When 10 rolled around and it was time to close, I figured I'd let Blaine know we were locking up. I started up the stairs and suddenly noticed it was dark. I got to the top and looked around. Not a single light in the offices were on. We stood there at the bottom of the stairs the whole time, and Blaine hadn't passed us. Even when Blaine isn't limbing like Nosferatu, strange things happen upstairs. The exposed water pipes leading upstairs twang like someone hit them with a hammer. Footsteps on the creaky floor echo through the whole back room. All this happens when the offices are pitch black as we stand next to the stairs. One night my partner and I got freaked out by the noises from the offices and decided to spend the remainder of the shift lapping the store. But as we walked perpendicular to the aisles, a can of green beans halfway down the vegetable aisle suddenly fell off the shelf. We put it back in place and started walking again. 2 aisles down, another can fell off. This time, as I put it back in place, a can 15 feet down the aisle flew off the shelf. We left that one sitting and huddled around the cash registers for the rest of the shift. To top it off, though, a bag boy requested to be taken off night shifts after an experience he had in the break room. The break room has 2 small bathrooms, male and female. He had... Well, what about all the other genders? Wait a minute, that's not very polite. He was taking his dinner break when he heard a baby crying from the woman's bathroom. He had been in there 5 minutes already and hadn't seen anyone come in, much less with a baby. He endured the crying for 5 more minutes before he got concerned and knocked on the door. Repeated knocks and questions got nothing back except for the non-stop bawling. He was finally convinced something had happened to the mother and cracked the door open. The room was dark and empty. This happened about 26 years ago, when I was still relatively newly married. My then husband and I moved into a townhouse-style apartment. The 2 floors of our apartment were on the 2nd and 3rd floors of the building, and the management office and mailbox area was almost directly below us on the ground level. That's important for later. The woman who managed the building was older, didn't care for the property well, and usually spent most days chain-smoking Camel non-filters in her office, and being a hateful old racist. Imagine renting a place from Juno, the social worker from Beetlejuice, but less helpful. She really resented that we had the townhouse, claiming we lied about my being pregnant when we moved in it, because she didn't want to rent that unit to people with kids. She also made a few disparaging remarks about my husband due to his race. She was a real peach, truly. So after the kiddo was born, I was keeping busy, keeping the house clean, and the baby occupied without a car or local mom friends. After lunch, the kiddo needed a bath. Anyone who's fed a 9-month-old baby food knows that a mess can happen. So I went upstairs and ran the tub. Soon I had the baby sitting happily splashing in one of those suction cup bathtub seats. Important to note, it's the middle of winter and we had no heat, an issue I'd been fighting Juno, the landlord, about for a while, among other maintenance issues, like my arcing ceiling fan, or the garbage disposal that was held on with duct tape and leaked. We basically had to keep a space heater or 2 in every room to keep the chill off. I had taken one of the space heaters in the bathroom to keep the bathroom warm enough for bath time, and had it sitting out of reach and splashing distance on top of the bathroom counter. I was standing in the bathtub getting ready to lift the baby out when all of a sudden the space heater started to rock back and forth when it had not been rocking before. I had this horrible feeling of dread as I looked at the heater and just reacted because I knew I couldn't get both of us out of the tub in time. I reached down to grab the baby seat, ending up pulling it off the tub and dropping the baby over the side of the tub to the bathroom floor. Just as the heater got to the end of the cord, it thumped into the shower door, bounced off the edge of the tub and landed on its side on the floor a couple inches away where it shut off. It had auto shut off in case it got tipped over. When I looked over to the corner of the bathroom, that part of the room seemed to just get darker, like it was filling up with shadows. There was no smoke, no change in the lighting, no windows, so no sun going behind the cloud. It was just darker. I also started to smell cigarette smoke, Camel non-filters, which I knew the smell of well from being in Juno's office all the time to get things fixed. The smell was so thick it made me cough and my chest ached, but I couldn't see any smoke haze, and I felt this overwhelming sensation of hatred and malice, like someone was standing there giving me a death glare. I grabbed the baby and a towel and ran downstairs. I was so freaked out I couldn't bring myself to go back up there, so I used some diapers from the diaper bag and kept the baby wrapped in the towel and cuddled up to stay warm. I stayed down there the entire rest of the day until my husband got home. Every so often I'd look up the stairs at the bathroom, but I didn't want to take the baby up there, and I was afraid to leave him alone downstairs. When he asked me why the baby wasn't dressed, I told him about the heater and the smoke in the bathroom, and he went up to check, figuring it was just another maintenance issue. There was no electrical issues, no damage to the outlet, no smoke, no cigarette smell. He had put the heater back on the counter and turned it on, watched it a few minutes, and it didn't rock. So it didn't rock itself off the counter earlier. He laughed it off, but later that day he heard Juno's adult son downstairs near the mailboxes, yelling his head off at people. And that's when we found out that she had a massive heart attack in her office earlier that day, and he'd found her dead in her chair with a Camel non-filtered still in her hand. That's just about going to do it this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you.
You learned almost too late that man is a feeling creature. And because of it, the greatest in the universe. And he learned too late for himself that men have to find their own way to make their own mistakes. There can't be any gift of perfection from outside ourselves. And when men seek such perfection, they find only death, fire, loss, disillusionment, and the end of everything that's gone forward. Men have always sought an end to toil and misery. It can't be given, it has to be achieved. There is hope, but it has to come from inside, from man himself.